to the D lawns at that time. And when I was coming back, I saw this, a lot of people getting very dressed up and so on, and going for a PPT, or the pre-placement talk as it was called. And the company, which was at that time a day zero company, I'm not so sure they're day zero anymore, was Wipro, right? And I was sleepy-eyed, unshaven, no bath, let me call it classic Bitsian style, in chappals, walking back to, Malviya, where I was there. And, I said, okay, let me, my classmates, my wingies asked me to, attend the interview. I actually said, I got late for the pre-placement talk, and they were opening up something for sales and marketing. And I said, okay, this is the only thing that I think I don't have to prepare for. And I went ahead and attended that session, got through, the 2 or 3 rounds of interviews they had, which was different from the usual test and stuff like that. They had a group discussion and 2 or 3 rounds of interviews and so on. I got through that incidentally in sales and marketing, which was like the biggest irony of its times, I guess, at that time. And that's, by the way, my first introduction to computers and at all. So I went out there as, this Mech by Design t-shirt, fellow, someone who'd done physics, not by choice, I can tell you that. Right, back in college, very interested in mechanical design, but went out there to, sell computers out to a lot of enterprises. So that was my first introduction. I joined Wipro, was in Hyderabad for 2 or 3 years, started off in Bangalore, then in Hyderabad for 2 or 3 years. That got me fascinated because Wipro as an organization at that point in time, even though I joined in marketing, they allowed me, you had no support of technology people for you. What is today called solution architecting or customer engineering or systems engineering and so on. So if you were in sales and marketing, you had to do everything on your own, So that's how I started learning, microprocessors. I started learning operating systems. I started learning networking, started learning the OSI stack that perhaps many of you still read with Tannenbaum and so on. It laid the foundations of computing. And then I worked for Ramco. I set up the e-commerce business in India. It was a hot thing at that time, very basic now, but, you can dial back, 20 years and you'll realize that, it was a revolution at that point in time. So I set up the e-commerce business for Ramco. That got me again thinking a lot around iPlanet and Netscape. For some of you who may not remember what these were the foundational technologies of the internet, Web 1.0 at that point in time. Then I got hired with Sun Microsystems, a product and a company that was fascinating. Let me call it the Google of its times, both in terms of its culture, in terms of the way it thought, the way the company was innovating. Obviously, they invented Java, which is the foundational element of anything that we do. I got the opportunity to be a systems engineer there, did a variety of roles, had the great joy of, and all tongue-in-cheek of meeting James Gosling and Bill Joy multiple times, and that kind of got me fascinated about development, about systems engineering, about, code processing. I became a high-performance computing expert within Sun. And then I moved on into management roles and so on. Ended up being the CTO for Sun Microsystems in India. And then in 2010, Oracle acquired Sun. Oracle, many people jumped ship, but I stayed with Oracle because it was a fascinating amalgamation of hardware organization, development organization to a core software engineering company. So I got the opportunity to do all. I learned databases. I learned middleware technologies because Oracle acquired a company every month at that point in time. So they acquired BEA, they acquired Siebel on the CRM side, they acquired PeopleSoft on the HR side, and so on, right? And in 2014, I got the opportunity to be the CTO for Oracle in India. Was a fascinating, time for me, developing the organization, really working with the engineering teams, working with customers, and so on. Then, interestingly, I also moved and ran enterprise sales for Oracle, which was, again, kind of a non-linear jump for me. Then Google called up, right? One of, I would say, one of the icons of the industry, Thomas Kurian, who was the CTO globally for Oracle. He joined Google Cloud, as you all know, as the CEO of Google Cloud. It was for me a no-brainer when I got a call from Google. So I'm here for the last few months. The advent of cloud computing has been amazing. Oracle started doing cloud more on the software as a service layer to begin with. So all of the products around CRM, which was Siebel, became the CX cloud, ERP became the ERP cloud, and HR became HCM cloud. And then they started doing a lot of areas around platform as a service and infrastructure as a service. But more about that later in terms of questions. But that's been my journey. So started off as someone who did physics and mechanical engineering to today being the CTO for Google in India. So it's a fascinating opportunity, and I can't thank BITS enough for that, right? I still tell Professor Sundar, who I'm in touch with at BITS Hyderabad, Professor Arya, back at Pilani, Professor Mittal back at Dubai, so grateful to the foundation that BITS really allowed, and really happy to be here talking to all of you. So I'll take a pause there. I've been blah-blahing for the last 10 minutes. I don't know if that was useful, but I think it'll be easier if you open it up for questions. I can answer more specific questions on people's minds.
Thank you, sir. In fact, that was quite inspiring for me, considering that I'm also a physics student, and I think in my dual degree I'll get a mechanical engineering. So yeah.
All I can tell you, Ayush, is that don't be disheartened. You have a life beyond MSc Physics.
Yeah, definitely. I would request my core team to turn on the presenter mode of everyone who is there in the meet, so that they can ask questions. Till then, I have one question. As you might be knowing, Google has launched this program called 30 Days of Google Cloud Program, and everyone is learning about Google Cloud technologies. So you saw that during your time of when you were in the industry, everything shifted towards the cloud technologies, right? So what do you see? What do you think is the future of this cloud technology?
So here's the interesting bit, right? First of all, heartiest congratulations on being part of the program. So I can tell you, you're very, very, we would have loved to have all of you in Google offices, but I'm sure at some point we'll start that too. This is a virtual program right now, but you can be sure that, we will launch a lot more, developer student club friendly, things. I'm very committed to that. So, this is a very unique opportunity for everybody. And I'm happy to do more sessions, as I said, right? Now, let me answer your question around what I think is the future of cloud computing. So to me, I think, cloud computing is now and here, right? And there are different facets to cloud computing because there's a lot of, I think, the good news and the bad news about the IT industry is that we love to invent jargons, right? And then, we continuously evolve the jargons as well, right? So simply put, I think cloud computing began purely as infrastructure getting rented out because people had excess infrastructure or organizations had extra infrastructure. But very quickly, the real value is as you move up the stack. So you have your server storage and network at the core layer. And then on top of that is where really the value-added services start coming up, right? Whether it's databases, whether it's analytics, whether it's AI, whether it's ML, whether it's IoT, blockchain, all of these services form the platform as a service layer. And then there are many companies, as you know, who also do software as a service. A classic example of software as a service is the platform that we're using right now, or Google Meet or Gmail service. They're running somewhere, you don't care, you consume it as an application, right? So that's the software as a service world. Now, there are very few players who do all three, just so that you are aware. Increasingly, everybody's trying to get to all three, let me put it that way. But if you really look at it, clearly, Amazon started off as the leader in infrastructure as a service by renting out what they had as excess capacity in their data centers and so on. But if you really look at the strategy that many others are following, right? So if you really look at it, the innovation that Google has done with Gmail, we started off as a SaaS player. Interestingly, we have over 9 billion users on our cloud platform, just out of Google properties, right? And as you all know, many of them use that, right? I mean, whether it's YouTube, Gmail, Maps, Google Pay, we have 9 billion users, which is like by far way higher than everybody else, right? But the interesting thing is that Google decided to use it first for, Google Cloud itself for its own properties rather than giving it out to other customers. It's only over the last 5 or 6 years that we really started taking this out to other customers, right? Over the last maybe decade or so. From a future perspective, to me, I think this is becoming foundational. So I see a future where pretty much, I would say 80, 90%, we are roughly about 15, 20% of the workloads have moved to the cloud right now. Globally, it may be a little higher, about 25%. In India, it's about 15 to 20%. So the way to look at it is that you've got 75 to 80% of an opportunity to move to the cloud, and all of the innovation will happen there. If you look at all of the cool companies globally, right, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Apple, all the big tech companies, they all use cloud by default. They're cloud native, as we call it, right? And then there are enterprises who are typically what we call the digital migrants or cloud migrants. They're beginning to migrate to the cloud. There are lots of enterprises who've completely moved to the cloud as well. So to me, this is foundational. You've got an amazing future. What cloud has become is it's almost become like the basic element in anything that you do. And if you're not part of the cloud computing wave right now, according to me, and if you're in tech, you're perhaps not in the right place. Ayush, over to you.
Definitely, I completely agree to that. And indeed, cloud technology is one of the most promising technologies. So now we are opening up to the questions from the audience. If anyone wants to ask any question, feel free to unmute yourself or put the questions in the chat.
The first one is always tough. I don't know if people are expecting something else. I'm happy to, talk to them about other things as well. Okay, Sharang has asked a question on chat. What advice? So first of all, you can call me Mitesh. You don't need to call me sir. What advice would you give to a student looking to pursue a career as a cloud engineer or architect regarding certifications, given that most companies that come for on-campus placements have software developers role? All right, good. Great question. So to me, I think that there are some foundational elements of, certifications. If you look at Google Cloud, you have a bunch of, GCP, solutions that are there. Don't just look at cloud, certifications fundamentally. Start looking at a number of other areas. For example, if you look at the elements around cloud computing, there are lots of elements and you can become an expert at a lot. So for example, security is a very, very hot area and will continue to be a very, very important area. So there are a number of, security certifications that one can do. The second part is around networking, right? I see that, one of the foundational elements of cloud is going to be networking. So just ensure that, you focus on that. If you really look at it on certifications beyond that, frankly, according to me, there isn't too much that you can really get in real life because you got certified in something. All right. Having said that, you've got a number of very good certifications, on Coursera, for example. You have a lot of free certifications. Use the MIT, open one. There are lots of very good certifications. My only view is that, don't be worried so much about certification being the only way in which you can achieve something, right? Also, just to give you some context, I don't know which year all of you are on, but if you are in your third year, we are going to hire 4 interns. They're out there on the Google Jobs portal. I'm happy to, send you some links as well, Ayush, offline, right? We're hiring 4 interns in my team to be a cloud architect and be a cloud engineer. All right. This is not a software development role. This is a proper architecture role. The internship will be for 8 to 12 weeks, starting in May to July. And then you have the opportunity for a placement in my team in Google, right? So we are opening that up. So that could be a very good opportunity as well. And I'm not looking for certifications. I'm looking for people who have the right mindset, who are not afraid to be in front of a customer, but at the same time be very technical, right? But I would expect a foundational understanding of infrastructure, which is servers, CPUs, storage, or networking, or security. These are 3 or 4 areas that I would certainly look at, or content delivery networks if you're interested in media and so on. So these are all elements of cloud computing that are there, right? That's the first one. I see a few more. Prajwal has a question which says, if someone wishes to become a developer, what should their approach be? If you could, Prajwal, clarify what do you mean by become a developer? Is there, like a specific area, or any, or if you could be a little bit more specific, that'll be easier for me. So while Prajwal maybe answers that, Prajwal, I'll follow on once you tell me a little bit more specifics about what you really want. Okay, I see you're a cloud developer. Okay, got it. Now again, if you ask me, these whatever I told you are the foundational elements. In my mind, one of the things that we're looking for when we're looking for cloud development certainly is an understanding of, so either you understand fundamental programming, interfaces that are there today, right? So either you are good at Python, you're good at R, you're good at Node.js, or you're good at, so you've got to obviously, code. That's going to be very fundamental, at least if you want to get into any of the big tech companies like Google. Second part is that, if you are interested in a specific area like data science or machine learning, that obviously you've got to, start pursuing that track very clearly. And there are various terminologies that one will see. There'll be single stack, turret stack, full stack, and all of that. But the important thing is that, it's too early, according to me, to start just looking at specific elements. My experience has been that you start off with something. I started off as an infrastructure hardware person, and today I'm doing something totally different, right? So don't worry about where you start, but do start with the foundational elements. That would be my fundamental guidance, if I can call it that, more than anything else, right? And I'm happy to answer more specifics as we move forward. So Alankrit has a question: which track should we pursue first, cloud engineering or data science and machine learning? And please explain their perks. I aspire to become a full stack developer, so please guide regarding the same. Got it. So explain the perks, as in, if you've seen Silicon Valley and I've got inspired by that, let me tell you that's not the real world, right? Is all I can say. However, I don't know what you mean by perks, so you can clarify that. All I can tell you is that most companies have a very open culture, which is why don't try to, pursue cloud engineering is a broad umbrella term. Data science is one element of that. Machine learning is another element of that. Networking is another element. Security is another element. The compute is a very, very strong area. Or you could move to the other end of software as a service, right? Where you could start developing for a SaaS platform or a PaaS platform. Okay, so if you ask me, if you're saying what is more valuable, I think each one in the cloud computing world is very, very valuable. If you can become a full stack developer, nothing like it, right? But let me tell you, full stack developer is easier said than done, right? A lot of people claim they are full stack developers, but you'll realize very, very quickly that, that's not as easy as people make it out to be, right? But if you are up to the challenge, absolutely, go out there and, give it a shot. There's great demand for each of those areas, whether it's cloud engineering, data science, machine learning, full stack, IoT. These are all very, very strong areas. Security, as I said, is a very strong area, huge, huge market. And I don't see security ever dying down in terms of an area. And that's why I kind of keep, and I see that is something that students have not really taken seriously. And I would actually recommend to take security and networking seriously. All right. So Sakshi has a next question. You can ask me follow-on questions if I haven't clarified. I'm just trying to, So Alankrit, you mean by perks, you mean benefits? Again, are you talking about a salary, or what do you mean by benefits, right? How to get a good start? Okay. I really don't know. Most, if you're talking about a starting salary, all of that, in my experience, the starting salary does not matter. Let me tell you and share with you openly. My starting salary at Wipro was 7,000 rupees a month. Okay, so that's about what I think most people spend these days, on Netflix and Amazon Prime and Z5 and whatever other OTT platforms that you use. So what I mean by that is that, if I can be very honest with you, I don't think it matters where you start in terms of your perks or benefits. It matters more what's the kind of technical work that you're doing. And I know I may sound a little odd, but I'm just telling you purely by experience that, don't get carried away by peer pressure that, XYZ got into this company and ABC got into another company. It's the quality of work that matters. The fact that you are from BITS will only matter maybe during your job interview and really nothing after that. I'm being very, very honest, right? Nobody ever asked me whether I'm from BITS. Most companies, are looking for people with great attitude and a willingness to learn. And if I can borrow a phrase, in my mind, in the technology world, mindset is the operating system of the mind, right? So if you have a better mindset, it matters a lot more, right? Don't worry about the benefits so much. I know I may not be able to tell you what the range is because every company has a different range in which they hire, right? For example, if you're a company who's primarily focused on data science, and that's an area that you have, it depends on the skill sets you bring to the table. If you bring a valuable skill set and you really are able to, innovate, they're great. There's obviously the other side, and I'll try to answer Yogya's question around what did you mean by Silicon Valley is not the real world? Please elaborate. Sorry, I was just, so I think Kirat said Silicon Valley is just a show, Yogya, right? So if you haven't, watched it, please go out there and watch it. It's one of those startup stories back in the Valley. And a lot of students, usually when I interact with them, ask me questions around how you can be an entrepreneur and so on. And I keep telling them that, it's about really having a good idea and having the gumption and the technology that can scale, right? And more importantly, if you can't solve a sustainable problem, right, the startup will just be a startup on your resume, right? If you really want to scale a problem, it's not about a cool idea. It's about really solving an actual problem that people face and whether you can scale that using technology, right? And what cloud computing really does is it kind of democratizes everybody, right? Because everybody now, if you're a developer back at BITS, or if you're a developer in a different college that's not as perhaps highly ranked, you still get the same access to cloud computing. In the past, that was not the case. 20 years back or 25 years back when I was studying back in BITS, right? If you wanted to get access to your computer science lab, you had to be a computer science student. Today, if you have a credit card, you can go out there and swipe and get an instance on GCP, right? So that's the interesting part about what cloud computing has done. So I'm trying and answering a few more questions out here and not getting stuck with one. Another question that came from Sakshi is, we have too many services provided by GCP. The challenge is to select an appropriate service satisfying the business need. Now, Sakshi, that's a very good question, very interesting question as well, right? So the good news is that, in fact, I would say that we don't have as many services as people need. And this is where the evolution of cloud computing is very important for you to understand. When you start working for a company, see, if you're a developer, you want everything open source, you want to develop everything on your own. But when you move into a company, when you start working for them or you're a startup, you want far more managed services. You don't want to be, for example, if you're working on, a Redis cluster, right, on the data side, or if you're spinning up, let's say, a graphical processor unit to, do some media processing, or if you want to go out there and configure and put your, database instance on Google Cloud. If you're on the enterprise side, you don't want to be spending time doing all of this hard work. So what all cloud computing vendors have done, including Google, is that we've made these services which are packaged that you can easily drag and drop, right? And that's what the development team within Google really starts doing, because that's how the adoption of cloud computing would become much faster, much better, more packaged, more secure, and we'll be able to manage it even better, right? So how do you select them? There are, in fact, this is what my team does all the time, because customers always ask us, how do we select the right services? How do we architect the right services? So there isn't like really a rule book or cookbook. It depends on the kind of applications that you want to deploy on the cloud. Do you want to just use it for infrastructure? Do you want to do analytics? So it depends on the business use case or the use case that you have. If you're a developer, there are a bunch of developer services that are available to you. You want a Git repository, you get a Git repository. If you are an analytics person or you're a data science person, you want a sandbox, you'll get a sandbox. And of course, in that, there are like 100 tools available, right? And everybody has a different way of, wanting tools. And that's the interesting thing about cloud computing. It's not going to get stale at all. But over a period of time, what will happen is there are 2 or 3 that will always become standard. So for example, if you're in the big data world, pretty much Hadoop and Spark, have become standard. If you are in the world of, application development and deployment, Kubernetes has become a standard, Docker has become a standard, right? So, however, are there multiple? There is Mesos and there is so many other players as well. But what ends up happening is that's where the startups will start doing a bunch of things. And the startup that solves the problem the best is the one that will become, the most deployed in the world of cloud. Does that help? Again, since these are all text questions, it's difficult to, interact. Alankrit says, no, sir, I mean, which languages should I start learning with? I mean, so Alankrit, that's the point, right? There are so many. I would say basic Python is very, very important. If you're interested in AI ML, go for Go or Golang, very important in the data science world. These are 2 basic ones. You could start with R as a language. You could start with Spark, Hadoop. Go to Coursera and, chart out a path for yourself. I mean, you can learn like 100 languages and still not be an expert. I would suggest start with 1 or 2. Some of the ones that I said are good starting points, if I can call them that. I hope that helps, Alankrit. And happy to, again, answer more follow-on ones. There's a question from Bhumik. What are some areas or projects that you guys at Google are working on, want to work on, and are really fascinated, excited about? Okay, that's a long one. So Google has Alphabet as a parent organization, and we have moonshot projects. We are always doing something interesting. If I look at Google Cloud, we're solving a number of problems for our customers, and a number of problems that they perhaps haven't encountered yet, but we believe they will encounter in the future. So some fascinating things are around data center deployment, right? Because as power and cooling for the kind of computing that is required is a big problem, right? So renewable energy is a big area of focus for us. We are like 100% carbon neutral for the last 3 years, right? So we, in fact, are carbon negative, carbon positive. What that means is that, we actually are way, way better than the others, and 100% of our data centers are that. So there's a huge amount of focus around renewable energy. The second part is that, there's a huge amount of focus, for us around AI and ML, right? How can we make that real and not just make it theoretical for our customers? So if you're a financial services customer or you're a telecom customer, how do you make AI and ML real for them? Right? So those are, I think, a few areas. There are like hundreds of other areas that we're working on. If you're interested to learn about it, just look for Project Moonshots, MOONSHOTS, if you haven't heard of it. Just, Google it, and you'll see a number of areas that, we've worked on. What I would strongly suggest is follow some of the Google Cloud blogs, where me and my team, we constantly keep writing about some of the new areas of research and projects that we are working on. Like in India, I'll give you a very interesting thing that we just recently have done in India. There's a lot, as you know, India has got like hundreds of languages and thousands of dialects and accents. So how do you start making vernacular search, vernacular conversational AI? So for example, if you called a call center for a bank, right? How can you call in your local language? And how can you ensure that AI helps you converse instead of having hundreds and thousands of call center agents at the back end? Can you have conversational AI work? So we have set up a research center based out of India just for that, right? So vernacular is a big area of research, for example, in Google India, right? So that's something that we are fascinated and excited about. We're very excited about the payments ecosystem in India. We're very excited about YouTube Shorts that we just
Hello. Uh, Sorry, sir. I think you are on mute.
have been talking on mute
I think
for a really long time.
No, sir. I think for 30 seconds or 1 minute.
Okay, because I don't know, somehow I guess I got muted. Sorry, what was the last one, Ayush, that I spoke about?
I think someone from chat can confirm that. About vernacular languages.
Yeah, okay. So we set up a vernacular language AI research center in India, right? And that's what I was talking about. That's a very hot area for us in India. In fact, we worked with the Prime Minister's office around that as well, right? To see how we can support a lot more around vernacular AI. So there are 2 or 3 areas. One is what is called speech to text, right? Which is very important because in AI, that's a big hot area. The other is I was speaking about, for example, media, and how do you, for example, know that there is no objectionable content. So there's a lot of video AI technologies that we are very, very, closely working on. We're working with local language dialect, integrating, for example, Google Home with Google Cloud, right? We are working with, for example, as you know, publicly with Reliance Jio on coming up with, Android 5G phone, right, at a really, really low cost, right? And that's a very, very, it's not a trivial problem to solve. So those are things that we are, and there are hundreds. Look at Project Moonshots, as I said, right? Can you speak a lot more? Through your college journey at BITS, how did you decide on your future paths and how did you know that this is what you want to do? So Nishal, frankly, I didn't know, as I said. I had no idea that this is what I wanted to do. But having said that, if you do have an idea, follow that passion. Just do follow that passion, do follow that, journey. Don't kind of let it go is my only suggestion to you, right? Frankly, every single thing that I thought I would do, I've been doing something else, right? Like, interestingly, I moved to sales 3 years back or 3.5 years back. I was running enterprise sales for Oracle in my previous role for a lot of global customers. I never thought that I'm going to be at Google coming back into a CTO role, right? So here I am again. So my view is that, it's all about mindsets, a lot. So I would say that, it depends on what you want to do and whether you're willing to, experiment, fail, and come back again. And if you haven't read about my PACE philosophy, please go out there and, read. I think it came out in one of your BITS Echo magazines. Someone reached out to me, but happy to, connect with you on that offline as well, right? So I do follow a philosophy called PACE, which is an acronym, right? And there are lots of things around it, but essentially it's about mindset to me, right? Raihan has a question. Could you shed some more light about the cloud competitive landscape? How it's changed, the rise of Azure, Oracle Cloud, Google Cloud versus AWS. How do you see this changing in the years to come? What helps each of these firms differentiate their product? Okay, cool. That's a long one. So in my mind, the cloud competitive landscape, here's a simpler way to explain this if it's easier. Okay, so I don't know how many of you remember, what was the first ever search engine? It wasn't Google, let me tell you that. All right, it was in 1993. It was a search engine called WebR3. All right. By the way, Google, since many of you may or may not know, was the 24th search engine. A full 5 years after 23 search engines were already there, right? So it's the same thing with cloud. What would happen is that there will always be a first mover, and AWS was that first mover, right? And then there will be, a bunch of movers who will follow. So while you all hear about Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud and AWS, remember that there is Salesforce, which is a formidable cloud player as well on the SaaS side. So please don't forget that opportunity. I know I don't work for Salesforce, but they're a very, very innovative company as well, right? Think about so many other companies like Adobe, for example, or Oracle, which is my alma mater as well. Or there are a number of other players, like, for example, there's Ali Cloud that's doing a lot of work. I understand the geopolitical, stuff. There's Tencent. There are a number of companies that are innovating in the cloud market space. Some are niche players. Some have a full stack on the cloud. Some are very focused on infrastructure. Some are focused on infrastructure and platform as a service. So let me tell you at least amongst the top 3 players, right? Like AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure are the top 3 players currently, right? So AWS is very, very focused on infrastructure as a service. That's their bread and butter. That's where they do maximum amount of innovation. Fantastic company as well, right? If you look at Azure, Azure is very, very focused on their existing install base of Microsoft. What it means is that they primarily are very focused on Office 365, Microsoft Teams, very focused on databases, which is Microsoft SQL. So wherever there's Microsoft as an install, because they have the advantage of a very huge install base. That doesn't mean they're not innovating on the others, just to clarify. They're a very innovative company, especially with Satya, as the leader there. They've like massively transformed the company. If you look at Google Cloud, as I said, we came from a business to consumer mindset, right? We came from the mindset of, we run 9 billion customers, 9 billion interactions every day on Google Cloud with YouTube and Gmail and all of that, right? And we opened all of this up to our customers as well in the B2C space. We also have, for example, a lot of SaaS platforms. So you see what we do, the platform that we interact with on Meet is a SaaS platform. Gmail is a SaaS platform. YouTube for media is a SaaS platform, and so on and so forth, right? So the way we'll differentiate is really around the core technology. Like we are very data-driven, AI and ML-driven, right? There are other companies that are not as data-driven and AI and ML-driven, right? So we believe that, that the second part which we're innovating on is Kubernetes, which, if you haven't heard of or if you haven't played up with, is going to be a massive area. So if that's one of the areas that you may want to learn, right? How do you containerize applications? How do you orchestrate containerized applications using Kubernetes, right? So if you ask me, each of them will have a different, area. And I'll borrow from Scott McNealy's quote, right? He once said, technology has a shelf life of a banana, right? So technologies will come and go, but there are some foundational technologies that you should learn, as opposed to, getting carried away by what's the hottest today, right? When I used to be way back in college, the best thing to do was to go out there and get a SAP certification, right? If you all remember, or an Oracle database certification, or a Microsoft, SQL certification, right? Today, none of that. I'm not saying they're not valuable, but they aren't as valuable as what technologies are today, right? So that's the way it is there, right? To Alankrit, it's too specific actually now. Should I practice or move on to blockchain basics? I would suggest practice, right? You're just shifting, too much. Python to blockchain is a big world. Blockchain is still not completely, there's a lot of very interesting work. There's a lot of noise, but it's still on the hype curve, right? Honesh has a question. Can you talk more about mindset? Okay, and what was my vision back then? I hope I'm not muted. Okay, sorry, I reached down. All right, so Honesh, if you ask me back then in Wipro, I was still hoping, I was in sales and marketing, and Wipro was a reseller. They weren't really innovating on core technologies, and even today are not, as you know, they're a services player. I really wanted to get to a product company. Honestly, that was my only vision. I never thought that I'm going to, be the CTO of a company and so on, to be very honest with you. Right. So my vision was really to work more for a product company at that time. I'm unable to find the intern role. I'll ping that over to Ayush. There are 4 intern roles. They must have opened up. If they haven't, we'll figure it out. Yeah. And I'll ping them over. I'm not sure if you folks are eligible or not, because this has certain criteria around which year of studies you are in and so on. But I'll ping that over to Ayush. Please, ensure that all the members, get that. Ayush, thank you. Does CG matter after college? And if you're comfortable, can you please tell us about your CG? Sorry, what's CG? Is that some terminology I'm not aware of? Is it CGPA you're talking about?
It's CGPA.
Oh, okay. It's called CG these days. Okay. All right. If you're talking about CGPA, let me tell you, I had a horrendous CGPA when I was in physics. Something like, and CGPA has nothing to do with it, because I didn't do any computer science and IT, as you can see, but I am able to talk to all of you in CS and IT. In MEC, I was very, very, let me say, I was a 10-pointer. So, that was my CG. So yes, I am comfortable. No shame. 25 years later, I'm married. I have 2 kids. So nothing's going to change by me sharing my CGPA now. But yeah, in MEC, I was a 10-pointer. In physics, I don't even remember. It was bad, is all I know. Right? How difficult is it for a core student to pursue CSIT career, as many companies allow till circuit branches? Manul, I'm not clear what the second part of the question means.
By circuit branches, you mean branches like CS, Triple E, and ENI?
Doesn't matter at all. Frankly, if you're a coder, if you're someone who's interested, don't worry at all what your branch of studies is. I'm a good example of that in front of you, right? You absolutely, no one cares about that, right? Yes, there is a preference for computer science because you would have formally studied that for 2 years, right? That's about it. But if you can fast track all of that, really doesn't matter. I mean, I never did MUPI, by the way, in my 5 years at BITS, but I was selling microprocessors to customers as soon as I left BITS, right? So you will get an opportunity out there, believe me. Right. All right. I think Prateek, sir, thank you. I think you're a faculty advisor. There are lots of projects. I'm not so sure about the collaboration opportunities formally, but I'm happy to introduce you to the internship program. Happy to, do some collaboration. Let's talk offline, sir. Maybe you can, get in touch with me via Ayush, and we'll try and see what we can do. Happy to help there, right? Whatever I can. We do a number of initiatives anyway. I've been helping on the practice school side. I've been helping. We opened up the intern program, as I just said. There are a number of things on the engineering side as well that we can do. Yeah, both in India as well as globally, right? So happy to collaborate with some of the research labs that we've just set up in India. But I need to know a lot more in terms of what's the kind of research that BITS and its faculty and the students are really doing. So, feel free to ping me. What are your viewpoints about edge computing? Will edge computing overtake cloud computing? The reduced latency systems to be a really crucial factor. Great question, Raj. Just to give you an element, edge computing and cloud computing are absolutely interrelated. They are not competing with each other. In fact, if you really look at even Google Cloud, we have an edge computing solution for telcos. In fact, if you look at YouTube, it's a classic example of edge computing already. I mean, have you ever seen that, even on today, I know none of you use 2G, but even on 2G, YouTube used to stream. That's because we had edge caches using CDN, which is content delivery networks, at the edge of various networks. So we had like over 2,000 caches already, and that'll only grow as we move forward, right? So edge computing is a reality, huge hot area. Google has invested. all the big players have invested, right? And it's not got nothing to do. One, latency is a great area, but it's also IoT on the edge is a very hot area. Development on the edge is a very hot area. Blockchain on the edge is a very hot area, right? Databases for edge systems is a very hot area, right? So you will find that, that's the fascinating thing about cloud for me. And that's why I shifted as well, right? Because it's an endless array of, opportunities that's available, right? Absolutely. Edge computing, it's not about overtaking cloud computing. It'll complement. It's part of cloud computing. Every cloud computing vendor has an edge solution. So go and look up Google's edge computing solutions. So does Azure. So does AWS. Everybody has edge computing solutions as cloud players. Right. I hope I answered that. Are there more questions? If there are questions like on audio, happy to take them as well. Okay, Sharang has one question. As you explained about the importance of fundamentals, how can I practically improve upon these? For prepping software developer, I would improve my DSA and build some projects. For the cloud fundamentals. Yeah, so you're right. Here's what I would suggest, right? The best way to learn this is, so for me, Tannenbaum was a Bible. Right, and it still is. By the way, if I could show you my video, I have my Tannenbaum right here, even after 20 plus years, right? And I'd never read Tannenbaum back in college, right? So I would strongly suggest that, none of those fundamentals have changed. The second part is why I keep talking about reading blogs on Google Cloud, for example, is that a lot of these fundamentals that you're talking about here are beautifully covered there. So go through the Google Cloud page, right? Look for blogs. There are lots of fundamentals of operating systems on the cloud. Please remember, operating systems, they operate on the cloud are very different, right? Computer networking is very different from what you see as fundamentals. It's the same OSI 7-stack layer, right? But it operates very differently on the cloud, right? So what I would strongly suggest is that you read Tannenbaum. It was my Bible, right? There are a number of other books as well, right? But that got me the fundamentals, right? And I still am able to, relate back to it, and then start reading a lot of materials out on this. Coursera has materials on this. The MIT Openware course labs have material on this, right? I'm sure professors back in BITS can point you, to this. We are happy to, run some sessions for you folks, at leisure. But what we really need is a classroom sort of setup. We can run like fundamentals of all of this, right? And again, everybody will be at a different, level in terms of proficiency here. So my suggestion is that, if you read the basics, you can go ahead and then we can, teach you a lot more. And finally, I would say just go out there and experiment. Get an account on Google Cloud. You have that opportunity right now, and just go spin up an instance. Nothing can go wrong. That's the cool thing about the cloud. You can't bring down the cloud so easily. That is, if you had a server right under your desk, it would be very tough. Okay, can you please tell us the name of this program, internship? There's no name of the program. It's a specific set of 4 interns that we will hire. I'll publish that out. As I said, there is no specific program. There is an internship program. There is a Google internship program. That's very much available. Just search for Google internship India and you will get it. All right. Can you tell the full name of the book? Okay, that's called The Art of Computing, or the Tao of Computing, as it's called, The Art of Computing, Andrew Tannenbaum. So if you're not in computer science, so looks like you're not in computer science. That's a 3rd-year course book, unless things have changed. There are 2 more questions. I'm conscious of time. So how easy is AGI developed? Is it a viable research area? I mean, again, yes, it is a viable research area, but can you just explain what are the functionalities of AGI that you're looking for? Because you're talking about artificial general intelligence, I assume, but I don't know if you're talking about something else. Maybe once you clarify that, I can answer that. Yes. Yeah. So AGI is a very fundamental area, Prabhav. So, very clearly there's a lot of, applications in use. There's this fascinating book. Let me recall the title of that book. that you must read if you want to really figure out whether AGI can be a hot area or not. This is by, if I remember, a Stanford University professor. I'll find the name and tell you. Read that. That's like a fascinating book. I'm just trying to look at it in my phone because I had a copy of that downloaded, but I'll ping that over as well. Feel free to ping me on LinkedIn and I'll ping you the name of the book, right? Can you shed some light on blockchain-based decentralized cloud solution? Okay, that's going to be a long one. Everybody's got a blockchain solution, but honestly, if you ask me, there is no maturity for applications on the blockchain world. It's not really become, there are a number of areas in blockchain that clearly are a problem, right? Scale is a clear problem, standards are a clear problem, and so on. But everybody's got a blockchain-based decentralized solution. The government is doing a lot of work around that. The banks are doing a lot of work around that. The shipping. So what's happening is that everybody is trying to do their own stuff, right? And as a result, there's no common standard emerging. And I do believe that, you can't really scale blockchain-based solutions today. So unless blockchain is, so one of the things that Google is doing is that we're integrating blockchain into the core database itself. So for example, Google's proprietary database is or the Google database is called Spanner and Bigtable. So we are trying and getting blockchain embedded as a core fundamental itself, within Google Cloud. What are your views on quantum computing? Yep. So as Sundar, who's the CEO for Alphabet and Google, we announced in a way what is called quantum supremacy, right? There's a lot of very interesting work going on. Quantum computing, in my mind, is not very far away. With the kind of computing problems that we have, I don't know about roles in projects. A lot of that research is happening out of our Sunnyvale and Mountain View offices. Right, there is some work going on here, but not a lot. I'll be very honest with you. There's not a lot in India, but there's a lot of work going on back there in the US on quantum computing. There's also, I think, some government regulations around what you can research, in different countries. Okay, I think we have another couple of minutes, so I may not be able to take more questions. So I'll take a pause there. Ayush, back to you. I hope this was useful. My apologies, I just was rattling out as much as I could, but I'm more than happy to do more interactions with everybody. Ayush, for BITS, I will do anything.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. That was really a great insight on not just the cloud technology, but also the other aspect of everything. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. And really appreciate all the time and all the best, right, for the journey ahead. And if there's anything I can do for you, feel free, right? I'm available on LinkedIn. You can connect or ask me questions on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Bye-bye. Have a great day.